Hello everyone, welcome back to Angie B Cards and Crafts. So today I have been playing with my gel plate and thought I might as well do a video. I have done a 10-minute tutorial that was closer to 15 minutes than 10 about using alcohol inks on a gel plate. But I'm just going to take it a little bit further and then use the alcohol inks and acrylics on the same plate, along with pieces that would add texture, such as corrugated card, stencils, got a range of different stencils here. I've also got some bubble wrap, which obviously is well used, but it doesn't matter, I keep using it. I'm also going to look at doing the pulls on 3 different types of card or paper. So firstly, I've got this was a batch of card, that's paper that I got given, I believe it's 110 GSM. So it's quite thin, and I have done a couple of pulls with it, and they come out okay, but they're just a little bit more flimsy than I would usually like, but I think they are usable. I've also got 300 ESM super smooth card from Pink Frog. I need to think which pink it is. It's Pink Frog. And then this is some black hammered card that feels like it's about 240. That I've had in my stash for a long time. I couldn't tell you where it was from. So they're the things that the substrates we're going to be pulling onto. Here is my lovely filthy dirty gel press. This side is actually clean because I've done quite a lot of work on it today, so it's actually quite clean. If we look at the other side, it's got lots of bits attached to it, but this side is the clean side. Apparently alcohol ink is good for cleaning your gel press. Who knew? Right, so to start with, I'm just going to put some alcohol ink on and I'm going to brayer it. I've got 2 brayers with me today. One of them is my large, I think it's 4-inch brayer, and this is the one that I use for alcohol inks. So you can see it's got lots and lots of layers of alcohol ink on it. So what tends to happen with that, because being the good brayer cleaner that I'm not, because I don't clean it, the alcohol ink stays on it. So when I do a run, it's the same as you get when you're doing the pulls off the dirty gel press. You get the other colour. And here's my, again, not very clean brayer that I use for my acrylics. Now this brayer is being slightly temperamental, but it is still my favourite, so I'm going to use it, but I may have to do some running repairs. But we'll see how we get on. I've also got a piece of paper at the side of me to do a run off, because I can't just get my hands on any of my journals at the moment because my desk is a complete mess. But you can only see this bit and it looks okay, which is good. Right, so I'm going to start off with a little bit of pink alcohol ink. This is the Ranger alcohol ink and it's Gumball, which is one of the new colours. Now I don't have a plan as to where I'm going to go with these or which ones I'm going to put on. I've got 3 inks here, but I've got more around me and more down behind me. So let's try these and see what happens. So I'm going to start with the pink and I'm going to start brayering it. And the reason I'm starting with the pink is because it's the lightest colour. And then running off into the next one. And it doesn't bother me at all that they're all mixing. That's what I want, because I don't know what colour I'm going to get. Hopefully not mud, but we'll see. So to get an idea of what you're going to get, you can actually cheat and run it off on here. So you can see there's quite a lot of blue, hint of purple going on there, which is what you'd expect, blue and pink mixing. Right, so the next thing I'm going to do is get a stencil. I'm going to go with this one, which is an All and Create one. It's probably one of my favourites, which is the big version of Lots of Dots. I don't think this one's Lots of Dots. I think the little one's called Lots of Dots, I seem to recall. Right, so we've now got that on there and it needs to dry. Sorry, I'm just picking a little bit of acrylic off the edge there. So obviously I've used this in the past for moving the ink around, but it's also quite handy just to give a little bit of a blast and dry off the ink. There we go, that's as dry as I need it to be, and then I need another colour. So I've been using blues and pinks, so I think I'll go completely against that and go with yellow as my next layer. see what happens. We should get some oranges and possibly some greens. We'll see what happens. So this acrylic paint is mid-yellow, and it's the Crawford and Black one, which is from the Works. So it's not an expensive one at all. It was the first set of acrylics I ever owned, actually, and these are just the ones that are left. Quite a lot of them have got large quantities missing. So I'm just going over this as I would with any gel press. Just putting a layer over, but then I'm not going to do a pull. I want to add more texture. So I'm going to use my corrugated card and literally just start putting lines into it. You can do whatever pattern you want. I like vertical and horizontal, or diagonal. I don't like both. Like diagonal would make that look odd to me. So I'm not going to add a diagonal, but I will add another stencil. I'm going to add this one. I haven't used this one yet today. It is a letters one. So for me to do a pull with it, I need to turn the letters so they're back to front. And I'm just going to do some of them. So just those top couple of rows, that'll do. A lot of people would recommend putting your stencils into warm soapy water now, but those of you that have watched my videos before, I am terrible. My stencils are all very well loved and multicoloured and covered in goodness knows what inks and paints. I do clean them, particularly ones like the Lots of Dots. If I start to see that the holes are beginning to cover over, so I'm not going to get a clear picture, then I will clean them. Now again, I'm just using this because I've discovered it's quite good for just speeding up the process of this drying, because you need your layers in between to be dry, because otherwise when you put the next layer on top, because we're not just doing this as a building up colour, this is actually putting texture in. The layers have to be dry so that when we put the next layer on top, we're not going to move the paint or the ink around from the layer below. It's going to stay put. It doesn't have to be 100% dry, but it has to be pretty close so that you're not dragging all that ink and paint around. So I'm now going to put on white, which is going to be the colour that I pull onto. Okay, so I've put quite a lot on there, which is probably way too much. Well, it is way too much, but that's fine. I don't like the neck of this bottle of paint. For some reason, it's letting out more paint than I would choose to put on. But the simple thing to do is run it off on your spare piece of paper. So just rub the brayer off and then pull off another layer with your brayer. So you can see that's taken on a bit of a yellow hue. So the layer below was yellow, so that's what you would expect to happen. But it's not gone really yellowy because it was mainly dry. So now for the moment of truth, I'm going to place that on and give it a good smooth all over. So this is the 110 GSM. So it's a thin paper. It's not got any substance to it. You can see it's quite flimsy. And this isn't what I would normally do a gel press pull on. Oh, I'm liking that. So there you can see the yellow is very obvious, but there is some white in behind it. Your base layer of your alcohol inks is the pink and the 2 shades of blue that have mixed with the pink and gone a bit purpley. You can see there's some lines. You can maybe just about see there's some lines of white coming through because that was the layer. It was on the yellow layer that we then put the extra texture using the corrugated card. You can't really make out the letters, but you can make out that there are other bits of texture in there. So I quite like that. Not my favourite, but it's okay. Alright, so for the next one, I'm going to again start with a little bit of alcohol ink. Now this is my favourite alcohol ink, and that's why it is nearly all gone. but I have just ordered some more, so I'm quite excited. So this is Sunshine Yellow, again by Ranger. And we'll just put some red with it. So a couple of nice bright colours. So with this one, I'm also going to add some isopropyl. So this is, you can choose to use the Ranger solution if you want to. It's entirely up to you. Personally, I've bought a bottle of the Ranger solution and I've yet to feel that I like it. I'm not a fan to date. It's a bit sticky. I don't like it as much as I like this. This is just a bottle of isopropyl that I then put into one of these needle nose bottles, and these are brilliant because you can be really specific in single drops if you want to be. Right, so before this gets too dry, let's pop a stencil over the top. This stencil is one of Leonie Pujol's. Never quite know how to say her surname. Is it Pujol or Pujol? I'm not quite sure. But I think most crafters in the UK at least know who Leonie is. If you don't, have a look on Hochanda. She's one of the presenters, but also is a really good demonstrator. She's not just a presenter, she's a crafter through and through. Okay, so we're going to do this one a little bit differently, because we're going to put on the next stencil, and then we are going to put, I've used reds and yellows, so we'll use a little bit of, we'll use orange. There we go. Decisions. So what I'm going to do this time is pop a little bit of orange out on my mat. This is Sennelier, which is one that I bought it because it was on sale at the time. So I'm not by any stretch of the imagination an acrylic snob, particularly when it comes to using my gel press, because it really is whatever comes to hand. In one of my other videos I talk about the fact that I use a whole range of different acrylics. Some of them are more expensive than others, so I do have some Jane Davenport ones, I do have some Dina Wakley ones. So I do have the expensive ones, but I don't mind using just cheap ones as well. I need to get another piece of paper because that one's getting a little bit damp. So now I can take that off, and you can see I've got those lovely circles. So that's 2 layers. Now what we can do, I probably should have done it while I still had the stencil on, is add some additional texture. Again, using this, but you're adding it through the layer you've just done. Okay. Just give this a quick blast. So in my previous video, I focused very much on just putting a layer of colour, pull it off, put another layer of colour, pull it off, put some stamps on, cover them over. It was very much about building layers on the paper. The difference with this one is that we're actually building the layers up on the gel press, and then we're going to transfer them to the paper. So that was orange, so I'm going to use this one now. Now this one is Studio Acrylics, but it's actually a transparent paint, which means that whatever's underneath it you will still see through it, which is quite nice. It gives you a different look. Okay, I'll just pop a little bit of this on. All the other paints that I'm using are opaque, but this one I quite like the colour as it comes through as a transparent ink. So you can see, you can very, very clearly still make out all the other inks that are below that one. I'm going to use a piece of this as my run-off sheet now. There we go. Right, so we'll get this one dried off a little bit. It's only today that I've discovered that I could use this to dry off the paint as well. I just thought it was a good idea and it seems to work. There we go. Okay, right, so we can now put another layer on and then do a pull. I didn't add any extra colour on that one. I don't want to pull it off on white, I want to pull it off on this blue. This blue is lovely. Again, it's another one of the Crawford and Black ones, but I really do like it's Cerulean blue, which I know you can get lots of makes of it, but I just really like this particular colour. So we're probably going to get a little bit of a hint of purple going on again, because it is pink and blue that I'm mixing on this top layer. So it also shows doing this that you can use whatever colour you choose as your pull colour. Sometimes it's easy to get stuck in the concept of using white all the time, and you don't have to do that. So on this one I'm going to use it on the 300 GSM Super Smooth card. Obviously I've not cut this one down to A5 size, the other ones came as A5. What I tend to do is work on A4 or work on whatever size I have. I've got, sometimes I work on an A3 and then cut the pieces down rather than trying to cut them to size, because it kind of works in two ways. Oh, I quite like that. So you can see there's a hint of orange. It looks almost planetary, but there's lots of blues and purples. I'm liking the colour on that, but I also think there's quite a lot left on here that we can get. So I'm going to, this time I am going to do it with white. There we go. So yeah, I was saying, what was I saying? I've completely forgotten. I think I was, oh, I can't remember what I was saying about before I did that pull. Oh, it's gone. Right. Oh, that was it. You don't have to use white as your pull colour. You can use whatever colour you want to, but just bear in mind it's going to be the back colour on whatever you do. So any spaces that you've got in your image are going to show that colour through. So this is hammered card, so it's got a texture on one side, it's smooth on the other. I like the textured side, so that's the side that I'm going to pull on. And this is kind of going to hopefully clean my plate a little bit, get rid of those last little bits of ink, but it's also going to give us an interesting comparison to the one we've just done. Oh yeah. So they are effectively the same image from the same pot. I've not done anything apart from add one more layer of white paint, and that's the difference that you get. And I think we have got another pull left on there, so I'm just going to pop those down and do one more, and this time we'll do it with, how about turquoise? So the more you do it, you kind of get each layer. I'm not going to cover the whole of it this time. I quite like the idea of just having part of it covered. I'm running out of space. That's one thing that if you are doing lots of pulls, is you need to plan your space, because you end up with loads of papers everywhere. I've currently got them on shelves, on the windowsill, on the floor, as well as all over my desk. Okay. So I like the look of that because I didn't put paint all over it, and I also think that I'm getting a little bit more texture because it's the dried on paint that's coming through, but you can still see there's a hint here and there of the alcohol ink that was the very, very first layer. And that's the thing to remember, is the first layer that goes on is the last layer to come off. So I put alcohol on first, alcohol inks on first, so they're the top layer. But the more you pull off, the less you've got left. Right, so I'm not going to get another pull off that. I probably could, but I'm not going to try to. I am going to use the alcohol alloys this time. I'm going to put a little bit of pink in the middle. And I'm going to do just one of my little flowers that I do. A kind of flower. They're not flowers as such, they're not a particular type of flower, they're just flower-esque. Oh, the sun's come out and is shining brightly through the window. That's nice. So one of the things that I'm liking about doing this on the gel press is you're not really getting a clear picture of what you're going to get, whereas if you do it straight onto paper, you can see what you're getting and you can be more controlled. So this is kind of a little bit more freeing. So I'm just adding a couple of dots and I let it sit just for a second or two before I start to use the puffer on it. And the reason for that is I want the isopropyl to actually interact with the alcohol ink that I've put down enough to move it. So you can see there's very little colour there because I blew it straight away. Whereas if you leave it just for a second and then blow it, you get to move all the surrounding colour. Okay, so you can be quite controlled in where you go with this, or you can be very, very random. Now you'll notice there's still some of that last pull left. So we're going to get some interesting texture on the top layer. Because remember, your bottom layer on the gel press is your top layer on your image. Okay, so now I'm going to add, but before I do that, I'm going to add a little bit of yellow in the middle because I want to make sure that I get a nice little centre bit. There we are, and then I'm going to add another one. The alloy that I'm going for is sterling. Said before about the alloys, I think these have all been, you know, you can just maybe just about see there's a layer at the bottom, so you need to actually shake up the alloys to shake the metal bits that are in it. Ignore the fact mine's pink. I put the wrong lid on it earlier on and it's gone pink and it's really annoying, but hey ho. It's quite pretty as well. So with this you can choose to use much smaller puffs. So what I've been doing so far is blasting and trying to get the ink to move as far out as it could. What I'm doing here is controlling it. I apologise for the squeak. It's like I've got a pet mouse. And by controlling it, you get it in a much smaller area, but you're also controlling the texture that's on it. I'm doing a little bit of blowing it back in there so you can see some of the red that was still wet has come back over onto the alloy, which is rather pretty. So I quite like that. So you've got two options now. You can carry on and build up lots and lots of layers, but I'm actually quite liking the way that's looking. And if we look at it from the other side, you can see it's kind of flower-esque. So what I'm going to do is just do a really simple, straightforward, cover it with white paint, and pull it, cover it with blue paint and pull it. Yeah, we'll go with blue. I do like this blue. It's the colour of the day on my paints today. So you can see there's some little bits of the alloy where the ridges were that were obviously not dry. So as I'm going over it with the paint, it's moving the alloy around. You can even see it's on my brayer. And that's fine. As I've said before, I don't actually mind that there's odd bits that I didn't intend to be where they are. It's fine by me. The one thing that I draw the line at is when I find one of my own hairs on the gel press. At that point I do stop and remove it and curse having hair. Right, so I'm going back to the super smooth because I want it to be onto a white card as opposed to onto a black background. because I think the blue will show up much better on the white card. Are we ready? So there we have a nice little flower-esque piece, and that is the really simple way of just using your alcohol inks and then using the paint to pull them off. You can see there's lots of texture there. We've got the texture from the previous pull that was left. We've got little bits of the alloy spread about just because it wasn't quite dry when I put the layer of paint over. And that's fine. I really like that. It's kind of under the sea-esque. I like that. Right, I'll do one more pull. And this one, I think... I think we'll go with greens. Just get my alcohol inks up. So this is my tub that contains my alcohol inks. I don't have anywhere near as many as I would like. But it's growing. Slowly but surely it's growing. Yeah, we'll use those 2 greens and we'll use the yellow again. This is why the yellow's running out, because I like it so much. So I'm going to put a little bit of yellow, then I'm going to put a bright green. I'm going to do it as a line. Then I'm going to do the dark green, and then I'm going to do something that I should have thought to do before, which is very quickly do a clean with my alcohol ink brayer. So to do that, all I'm going to do is get my little needle nosed doodly-do. I'll remember the name of it in a minute. Bottle, that's the word I was looking for, bottle. And I'm just literally going to give it a rub onto this paper towel and then wipe it. And that's going to get the majority of the remaining ink off. And the reason I've chosen to do that this time is because I actually want these colours to be true. So I'm going to start with the lightest colour, start with the yellow, and then work my way along. And then I'm going to go down to the green, the darker green, and work my way back. Okay, so we're going to get a little bit of an ombre, is that the right word? Change in shade, change in colour as we go down the piece. Now, we will use the circle stencil again. Yep, that's fine. Just checking it wasn't still very wet, and it isn't. I can't really make that out a terrible lot, but not to worry, because anything that you put on top of this now will come through the alcohol ink. You can see through the alcohol ink onto your gel press, which means you'll be able to see through the alcohol ink onto the paints you put behind it on your final piece. So I've used greens and yellows, so let's go for a bit of blue again. As you can see, I completely ignore any colour theory when I'm doing this and just do what I fancy. And the reason for that is that's how you learn, that's how I learn anyway. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's not the end of the world either way. So that's just cleaned off now, and I'm going to go for the letters again. I'm just going to pop them in the middle and roll over them, and do a really firm roll this time, because this time I want them to show up, or I'm hoping they show up anyway, and then lift that off. So you can see there quite clearly the letters are still there, but they're reversed, and the reason that I've reversed them is because I know that when I pull off the print, it's going to be the reverse of whatever is on. Give it a bit of a blast to try and dry it off a little bit. There's some edges there, so I think I'll add a little bit of interest to the edges. Where's my bubble wrap? There it is. So I'm just going to take my bubble wrap and pop it along that edge, and pop it along that edge. I do love bubble wrap, it's brilliant. It's really helpful to just give you an option for additional texture without any extra expense, without having to think about it. And once it gets to the point where all the bubbles have burst or there's too much ink and you're wanting a different look that doesn't pull off the ink from your bubble wrap, you can just get a fresh piece. To be honest, I've had that piece for a few months now. I've had it through the whole of lockdown actually. It's doing quite well. Okay, so because I want it to be bright when it comes through, I'm going to put white behind it because obviously, oh, that's splatted out. That bottle's nearly done. Right, this is what I said about my running repairs. My little centrepiece keeps popping out and I keep having to pop it back in to make my brayer move. I don't know why it does it. I've been doing it for a while now, but I still love this brayer. I love the size of it. Even though the bigger ones cover more, there's something about this brayer that I just really like. So I'm not getting rid and not replacing. Okay, so for this one we've got one space left on the black. I've got a white back, so that means it should show up well on the black. So let's give it a go. So we put we put greens and yellow down on the first layer. Then we put a layer of, I've forgotten, was it blue? Yes, it was blue. And then we put a layer of white. So let's see what we get. So you can see the letters have come through there. You can't actually see an awful lot of the alcohol ink on that one. There's a couple of little hints of it here and there, but there's not a lot come through. That one's a little bit disappointing, but it just shows you that what I would do now with that one, because I'm not happy with it, is use it with several other layers and just build up over the top of it. So that's a base layer for something else. And that's one of the things to bear in mind, is that if you don't like something, it's not the end of the world, because you can just build up another layer, another layer and another layer on top of it, and then decide what you want to do with it as a final piece. So I hope you found that useful. I will just do one more pull on here. I'm going to do it in the pink just because I like the pink. And that's to try and clean it. Now what I'm finding is sometimes the thinner paper, so the 110 GSM paper, as opposed to the card, is better for the clean up pull. I don't know why that is. I would guess it's something to do with the fact that it's more malleable into the shape of the gel press as you're rubbing it. It's got more flexibility. What you'll notice when you use the thinner paper as well is when you're pressing on it, you'll see that you may get the edges like I just have done, but you'll also potentially see that the paper almost stretches a little bit, because obviously the thinner the paper, the less resilient it is to anything damp hitting it. Right, let's see what we have here. Oh yes, that's pulled off quite nicely. So on that one, you can actually see there's very definitely bubble wrap. There's very definitely letters on there. We've got some of the alloy that we had a couple of images ago. I think that's actually a nicer piece than that piece, personally. I prefer it. But you can also see, if you do a comparison there, this pulled really nicely here. So there was a gap here, so we've got a lot more pink, because pink was the colour that we put on as the pull. If there's nothing on it, the pink is going to be the dominant colour. So where you see more pink here, it's because there was a lot less paint and ink on the gel press, whereas on here you don't see as much of it, as much of the top colour, which was the white, because we pulled that on white. So you see a lot of the blue, because that's the layer below the white. The bits that are coming through is the white layer, so that's your transfer layer, if you like. But I quite like that one. That one I think I'll do something else with. So we've made quite a few different images there. I'll just pop my cover back on my gel press, nice and clean. And just see if I can pull everything in that we've made, just so you can see. And it's not taken long to make all these. Oh yes, we've got those ones as well. So we've got the yellow ones. So we've made quite a few different pieces. I can't remember if we made that here or not. I'm not sure. But we've made quite a few different pieces. I mean, that one's just a clean up. So that for me is trim it down, and it's a background either in my journal or on a card. That's fine. It's on the thinner paper, so it's absolutely fine. I quite like this to then stamp on and potentially stamp and emboss in white so that it's going to stand out from the dark background. Or the other option is to put a lighter layer of paint or ink over the top of it. I quite like this as a background. I think that's quite grungy because the pink and the blue have gone purpley and a bit muddy and mucky. So I quite like that one. This one I like because you get all the different colours coming through. I think I did this one before I started the video actually. I'm confused now. But I like the fact that you get the power of the colours coming through it. That one, for some reason I always love the flowers, but I really like that one because it does look a little bit like a flower, but it's like I said earlier, it's got that underwater feel, which I rather like. These ones, 3 off the same pull, which is quite good. It just shows you the different layers. So as I say every time I do any sort of video around using your gel press, the best thing you can do is just keep playing. Don't be afraid of it. Don't worry that you're going to damage it. Throw things at it and see what happens. The one thing that you don't do obviously is heat it up, which is why I'm using this to dry things rather than a heat tool or a heat gun. Because if you heat it up, it's just going to melt. That's kind of obvious. But just throw things at it and see what you can come up with. And don't be afraid to use things that you can find lying around, like bits of corrugated card or bubble wrap or kitchen utensils or leaves or anything like that. Anything at all you can actually put on the gel press, as long as it's flat and it's not going to damage the surface of the press. What you don't want is to put something sharp on it that's potentially going to damage through the surface, because it is squishy. It's like jelly. It's like when you open a packet of jelly before you melt it to put into a mould. It's that kind of a consistency. But it can be ripped, so you don't want to rip it. My other suggestion would be, if you are going to get a gel press for the first time, is get a larger one. This was the first one I got. I do have others now, and they're all bigger than this one. But I've been playing on this one just because I was using my alcohol inks on it, and that's the one I tend to stick to the alcohol inks with. But the larger the gel press, the easier it is to then pull off the bit that you want. I hope you've enjoyed that and found it useful. Please nip over to Facebook, click on Angie B Cards and Crafts, say hello, show me what you've been making using your gel press. Click on YouTube to subscribe to the channel, then you get notified of any videos that I do. I do my tutorials on a Tuesday, which are usually about 10-15 minutes, and I usually put one other video a week out. I'm also on Instagram, where it's Angie Mary B, and if you have any questions or anything that you'd like me to do, please let me know. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.